So it's time to change the transmission fluid on my daily, which is a 2012 Honda Accord 4-cylinder automatic. So while we're not intending for this channel to be a how-to channel, this is a job that I need to do to my car, so why not do a video on it? Let's get the hood popped and get started. So the transmission dipstick on these is back here, down behind the battery here. So that's where you would check your fluid, and that's where you're going to put the fluid in at as well. Now our fluid here is a little bit brown, but it's still mostly red. I probably should have changed it a little sooner, but we're still within that area that I think it's still pretty good in. But, you know, what is the factory recommendations for how often you should change it? I don't really know. So I got my owner's manual out and I looked through it and I tried to read it. Nowhere in this manual does it give a mileage that you should change it at. What it says is the transmission should be drained and refilled with new fluid according to the maintenance minder. So what is the maintenance minder? So the odometer becomes your maintenance minder when you need maintenance done. So this will come up with your faults, like say you leave your gas cap loose and it gets a fault for a evap leak. It'll say check your gas cap, or in this case it'll say oil life is 15% because it's reminding me to change the oil, which yes, I'll be changing the oil while I have it in here. But there's a secondary number here. This is a category, A and B. Now, if it just says A, all they're telling you is, yeah, just change oil. B means you should do other service as well, such as, in this case, with the B, is just, checking your suspension and your CV boots and all the other stuff, to start looking at all that stuff. Okay. So under the symbol A or B, you also have numbers that come up, 1 through 5. 1, like we have here, is just rotate your tires. And then they have 2, 3, 4, and 5, which can be replace the air cleaner, replace transmission fluid, replace spark plugs, or replace the engine coolant. And a little bit more than just that, but that's the basics there. So this is telling me just to rotate my tires. But shout out to all those people who never read their manuals like me until you're really trying to look for something. I didn't know what that meant until today. So I don't know if that's ever come up as replace the transmission fluid. We are at 70,000 miles on this car, and I intended on replacing it at 60 because that's the known mileage that I'm used to thinking about for transmission fluid. So since I have a lift, I'm going to be putting it up on the lift, but you don't need one to do this. You can jack it up and put jack stands under it, but you always need to be careful where you're putting the jack stands and look in your owner's manual of where to put them to not do any damage. So if you're going to do this on jack stands, you should at least put jack stands both front and rear to keep the car level, because that's important for proper draining and refilling of the right amount of fluid. Now you don't have to take the front wheel off. I'm doing it because it makes it a lot easier to see what we're doing. This whole pan underneath here has to come out, and there's all these little push-ins all along here and around here and up here. They all have to come out to take this out, but it also goes all the way up here, and there's one up here on both sides that has to come loose to get this out. So these push-ins, they have special tools to take these out. If you don't want to buy the special tool, don't have it, or like me, are just too cheap and don't want to spend the money on it, you can just take a little screwdriver, get in here, and you can kind of get this thing to pop a little bit to where you can get behind it, and then take a set of side cuts, slide that behind there, and then pop them right out. And this works with this style on all makes and models. Now I did go online and try to find some more information on the number of miles that Honda suggests to go for changing this fluid. And I found all kinds of different numbers from all kinds of different people who are connected with Honda. Some of them saying they were Honda dealerships, some saying Honda mechanics, and they have all kinds of different numbers. One of them said 30,000 miles, but that was a dealership, and my guess is they're saying 30,000 miles because, well, dealerships make more money off service than they do selling cars, and they want you back in for service. Now there is one of these push-ins that's kind of back up in here where it's hard to see. So the rest of them all the way around are pretty easy. So most of the other people connected to Honda were saying anything from, say, 50,000 miles. Some were saying 50 to 100. Some were saying 60 to 120. So your guess is as good as mine about what the actual recommended mileage truly is. But I would say 60,000 is probably not a bad number. If you're doing a lot of stop and go traffic, maybe go a little less, 50,000 or something like that. So I think I got them all now. You got to actually get this pulled out of there. There's a little notch on both sides here. Once you get that pulled out, it should come down, unless I missed one. And this comes out. All manufacturers are using these anymore because they need them for airflow to get better fuel mileage. Some of them make this a little easier than others. This notch here is for changing the oil, so you don't have to mess with this, but there is no opening for changing the transmission fluid, which is right here. So here's your drain plug. It's actually made so that you can just take a 3/8 drive ratchet and just put it right in there. Now I've heard that if you've never changed the fluid before, the first time can be a little difficult to get the plug loose. It's a little tight. You just take the plug out, and this thing, it's really just a drain and fill. There is no serviceable filter for this that you can buy. You're just draining and refilling. So yeah, now we've gone 70,000. You can see it is a little on the dark side. I should have changed it to 60,000 like I intended to. It would have looked a little better than that. Next thing you want to do is look at your drain plug. This is a magnet. You want to see what's on that. This is looking pretty good. That's not bad at all. So the manufacturer recommends only using the genuine Honda fluid because of course they do. All manufacturers do. But and usually I call BS on that. But in the case of Honda, I would say stick with the genuine Honda fluid. Don't use the universal import fluid. And I would say that with any of the imports, actually. I don't like the idea of the universal because these guys, they all do stuff slightly differently. And one thing you want to do is make sure that you don't have a CVT, which obviously if you got that drain plug, you don't. It takes special tools to hook up to those, usually. But never use CVT fluid in an actual automatic, and never use ATF in a CVT, ever. So make sure you're using the correct fluid for your vehicle. Now, you need a nice long funnel with a long hose to go down there, and I do have one around here. I just cannot find it. I can make this work, but you may not want to try it this way. So it takes 3.6 quarts. Now, you always want to check it with the transmission warmed up. Should go drive it a little bit, or at a minimum at least start it and run the car until a fan goes at least one cycle. Now after draining it, you should always drive it first. not because you want to make sure all the fluid's getting in everywhere it needs to go. And then you check the dipstick, make sure it's in between here, top it off as necessary if it's not enough, but 3.6 quarts should put you right on the mark.